Mr. T, I appreciate the platform. I think I must start by saying this that I'm privileged to be a part of this space, which is so educational. It is indeed a privilege and further an honor to be a contributor as well. I'm very happy from the submissions that I've had, which in more than one way acknowledged and echoed the view that GP affects all of society. I'm happy to also acknowledge that even our legislations are being amended and developed to highlight this reality. More so, the civic organizations are acknowledging this fact as well. I'm particularly happy because a couple of years ago I harbored a worrisome concern, and the concern was this: just a gender-based violence against women and children. My concern was specifically around the children part of it. Who is children? I asked myself. I then rightfully said that children is girl and boy. And then I was immediately confronted by the age of majority in South African law, and quite frankly, universally, which is 18 years. This became a cause for my concern because the boy child who attains age of majority becomes a man without the need to expand on manhood as a concept. And by default, he loses all the protections that were afforded to him as a child, and immediately he forms part of the problem, which is men. So safe to say that this transition from being a child and a victim of GPE to being a man and thus a perpetrator is not accompanied by any form of healing and learning and learning. All of a sudden, he suffers the same fate as men who are not taken serious as victims of GBV. That was the view that I harbored. And I felt that as if as a society we are ignorant to that reality. But as I had already highlighted at commencement of my submissions, that I'm happy that there's been a shift from both society and the legislature and the civic organizations. Whether the understanding is mutual, I can't say. I'm even more open to being educated, in particular about these views that I harbored at the time. And so I move then because my submissions today, Mr. T, will be more academic. I'm an attorney, so I'll make submissions which are more legal than anything because I've listened to various speakers, and I can confidently say I agree with all their submissions, and I think they've covered that part, the other part which I'm not really going to. So I'm just going to focus more on the legal side of things, and I've heard comments about the justice system. I've heard comments about the subs. So I'll just highlight the legal part of things in a sense that the processes, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll focus on the various but before I do that, I want to just highlight because I mentioned that there are legal developments with regards to the pandemic of GBV. Currently, there are three bills: the Criminal Law Amendment Act, in brackets, sexual offences and related matters. You have the Domestic Violence Act, which will be or is being amended to include people who are engaged, people who are dating, and so forth. And then you have the Criminal Procedure Act, which will address the regulation of granting bail and considering parole to people who are convicted for sexual offences or for offences related to GPV. And it is also imperative to mention the National Register of Sexual Offenders. For me, it is very important to have such a register because it can help employers in childhood development centers, in schools, in institutions which house or treat mentally disabled people to avoid hiring people with a history of sexual offenses. We saw a couple of years ago there was a boys club. I'm not sure if it was a soccer team or a school in and or around Soweto, if I'm not mistaken, where a coach was convicted um for sexual offenses against those boys. So those this such a register will help to curb hiring such people in the future. But my view is that GBV goes beyond the popular male-female roles. It includes violence against the LGBTQI community. It includes domestic violence, sexual violence, and structural violence. Interesting, because structural violence is a type of violence that is built into structures which perpetuate unequal power relations and unequal opportunities for different genders. And perhaps the foundation of that would be what is popularly known as patriarchy. But before I get into the academic side of it, what drives GBV? In my view, the first and most popular cause is patriarchy, as I mentioned. And then you have um, another big cause of GBV, which is a culture of violence. That includes male superiority complexes, strict reinforcement of gender roles, hierarchical complexes. South Africa, in particular, is a society which has a very violent culture. Look at the recent protest about President Zuma. You look at the student protests, you look at the labor dispute protest, you look at the service delivery protest. All this might look irrelevant, but what they do is to introduce to children a culture of violence from a very young age. Children grow up knowing that the only method of being listened to or achieving your goal is through violence. And the most prevalent and popular cause of domestic violence, um we have a view that children who grew up in abusive environments tend to become abusers themselves. One of the previous speakers highlighted it nicely so, and called it out to say, while that might be the case, it's not always the case. And so for me, I'm saying all these other types of violence that I've mentioned, they contribute directly into why people grow up to be violent. Now, the academic side that I mentioned, the legal side, in fact, the first one that I want to touch on is the Domestic Violence Act, which describes domestic violence as any form of abuse which includes physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, or economic harassment. It can be damage to property, it can be stalking someone, either in person or on social media, entering someone's property without their permission. Any other abuse or controlling behavior which causes harm or may cause harm to one's health, safety, or well-being. If you're experiencing any of the above mentioned, you can apply for a domestic violence protection order. In terms of the Domestic Violence Act, then these are the steps. You apply for a protection order at the magistrate nearest to where you live or work at any time, whether it's during the day or night, on a public holiday or on a weekend. That service doesn't close. You can apply for it at any time. So the first thing that you apply for is an interim protection order at your nearest magistrate or high court. And then once you have applied for the interim, you'll also complete what is called a Form 2. You're applying for protection order at your nearest magistrate. And the application will be made by way of an affidavit. So when you arrive at the court or police station where you'll be assisted by the clerk of the court, you will be requested to make an affidavit which will explain the facts, like what happened for you to be there. It will also state the nature of the order that you are applying for, which will be domestic violence protection order. And then obviously you will also, let's say maybe the person stays in Mamelodi, you stay in Sentin. You'll also give the name of the police station where the applicant or where the complainant is likely to report any breach. So if you stay in Sentin, you are reporting someone who stays maybe elsewhere. You will then name a police station in Sentin to say that's where you will go if the perpetrator breaches the protection order. So if you are bringing an application on behalf of another person, the affidavit must also state the grounds on which the other person has material interest, then the occupation of the other person and capacity in which such a person brings the application. So if you are a mother, you'll state that I'm the mother of so and so. If you are a cousin, if you whichever capacity in which you bring the application. So if you are bringing an application on behalf of maybe your sister or someone, that person must also give you written consent to state that they actually are giving you permission to make such a complaint on their behalf. So then who may apply for a protection order? It's anyone who has been abused or who is being abused. It's a minor, meaning a child. They may also bring an application unassisted. So they don't really need to bring their mother who might be the perpetrator, maybe in a certain situation. It can be any person who has an interest in the life of the complainant. So as I said, if maybe you are an uncle to a nephew or a niece and you are well aware that they are being abused, you have the power to go and apply for a protection order on behalf of that child. So and there are other people who can apply on behalf of someone, obviously with the written consent. It can be a counselor. If maybe you are a counselor and you or one of your patients or people whom you are counseling is a victim or is currently in a situation where they're being abused, you can also apply on their behalf, obviously with their written consent, because some people are not open to, or maybe they are skeptical or scared to take these actions of applying for protection orders. It can also be a health worker, a policeman, a social worker, and also a teacher. So now that you have applied and you have a protection order against someone, unfortunately, it doesn't guarantee that that person will comply with that. So what happens when this person doesn't comply with it? Well, you can make an application that the warrant of arrest, because when they grant the protection order, it comes with a warrant of arrest. So let's say maybe the person doesn't comply with the order. What you do is you call the members of police to come and effect that warrant of arrest, and then they will arrest the person and maybe the person gets out. So a warrant of arrest can only be executed once. So if maybe they continue even beyond that first arrest, you can come back, apply for that person to um, for them to issue with a further thingy, a warrant of arrest. So you can also apply for variation or setting aside of a domestic violence protection order, and this can be done by either the respondent or the complainant, by giving notice to the other party and the court. So if maybe someone has got a protection order against you and perhaps the circumstances have changed, maybe you've done mediation or whichever steps or whatever that might have changed, then you can still go back to court to ask them to say, yes, circumstances have changed, or maybe they haven't changed. I'm applying it. I want further conditions into that. You can make such an application. So the second one that I want to touch on to is the Protection from Harassment Act. Because with Domestic Violence Act, it applies to situations which there is the existence of there is the existence of a domestic relationship. But with, like, people are often victims of GBV from people they know nothing about. On social media, maybe someone keeps harassing you. So the Protection from Harassment Act, it applies to situations where there is no domestic relationship, and it describes harassment as direct or indirect conduct that either causes harm or inspires the person complaining of harassment to reasonably believe that harm may be caused. So Conduct which qualifies as harassment according to the Act, it includes watching someone, pursuing or accosting of the complainant or someone in a close relationship with the complainant, such as a spouse or a family member. It also includes verbal communication aimed at the complainant. So the Act further recognizes electronic communication that causes harm or makes the person or the complainant to feel in danger of being harmed as harassment. So the procedure then to apply for a protection order is that if you are being harassed, you may apply for a protection order against such conduct at a magistrate court again, or even at a police station where you'll be assisted by clerk of the court. So legal representation is not necessary. Perhaps in some situations it's better to have Monare advising you, guiding you on the process, or even doing the application on your behalf. The process then to apply is by completing an application form where you are required to set out the reasons why you are applying for a protection from harassment order, and then you also list the full details of all incidences of harassment that you have experienced. You are also able to include specific acts which were committed by the person that you are applying for a protection order, protection from a harassment order against. So those are the options which, when it comes to GBV, the society has. And I just want to also echo what the immediate previous speaker said about we often say police or the judicial system doesn't do much about GBV or violence and such offenses. And when she said that these are also people, you may find that you are going to report abuse at a police station, and then the police official who assists you happens to be a perpetrator himself. He happens to be abusing his wife at home or his children at home. So unfortunately, you are confronted with we are confronted with such realities where um people are hired as policemen, they rape, they abuse, and they kill their partners, other members of the society. So that then becomes, a very unfortunate circumstance where victims of such crimes have to be assisted. Similarly, even with judges, just because someone is a judge, unfortunately, just because someone is a judge doesn't mean they are not an abuser. They are not a perpetrator of these horrendous crimes. It's that is unfortunate, because that is one person who is supposed to uphold the law. That is one person, one of the first people who are supposed to be law-abiding citizens. So unfortunately, our cases and our concerns and our problems are in the hands of such people. Similarly, you have social workers who abuse their own. So but that doesn't mean all hope is lost. The previous speakers have asked us as a society to tackle this, with unity. So that is what I wanted to submit today, Mr. T. Mahwe. Just to provide that knowledge or that information to those who might not be aware. And yeah, I mean, that's just that. To those who missed some of it, they can just go and check out Talk Law with Monaro on YouTube. It will be there. The information will be there. And thank you so much for the platform once more.